McGlynn is in. I repeat, McGlynn is in. Let the fun begin. This is the Commissioner Evaluation Podcast with your host, John McGlynn.
Is that Herms?
He got them guests on the Rolodex, stopping by to talk about some Dynasty Superflex. Everybody, yo, Commish is in. It's time to sit down to listen to John McGlynn. Yo, who we trading, who we fading, who we getting off the squad. Knowledge never overrated, playing for number one. And yo, McGlynn is in. It's time to let the fun begin. It's the Commissioner Evaluation Podcast with John McGlynn.
Yo, welcome aboard. Welcome to the Commissioner Evaluation Show. I'm John McGlynn. You can find me on X at John McGlynn75. Only 5 more weeks of the fantasy football regular season games left to play, so trade deadlines have passed in redraft leagues. Dynasty League trade deadlines should never be a thing. 24/7, 365 with trading, baby. Let's get crazy. Let's get these games going this week. Let's get to the show sheet. Let's breeze through some commissioner questions, some Week 9 injuries, some Week 10 waiver wire, some team-by-team quick hits. We'll review some trades that went down in the Mighty McGlynn home leagues, and then we'll evaluate a team to see if it's a win now or a start selling off assets kind of team. So I jumped around the north side all day on Sunday, watching the games in the Bucktown area with a couple guys from my home fantasy football leagues. We're trying to find some good sports bars in a place my buddy just moved to. So we found some decent joints. Started off at the Moonlighter, headed to Gracie O'Malley's, went to the Boulevard, and then at some liquor store watching the Cowboys-Eagles game, which will end up being the cheapest and probably most fun bar anyway. So, but it's a weird area to watch games. These are kind of more trendy than sports bars, but it's a little different than the South Side bars for sure. But JT, what's new and exciting with you?
Oh, just still reeling from that Missouri loss to Georgia. I thought they had a shot to get the upset. They didn't. So that was my big weekend thing. I was trying to get that. But my fantasy flag football team won, so we number 2 seed going to the playoffs this week.
Sweet.
Pumped about that.
Sweet. John Daigle, tell us about yourself, where the people can find you on all the platforms, and what you do in the fantasy football world that makes people want to follow you.
Yeah, you reached out about which bars you were headed to in the Bucktown, Logan Square area where I live. But my Sundays, as you know, are just crazy. I have to wake up, get everything ready for DFS, then jump into a conversation on Discord for all the 4for4.com subs where I work at. And then from that point forward, I have to take notes throughout the day because I do the recap show with our friends at Underdog, Josh Norris and Hayden Winks. Get that up between Sunday Night Football. And then Sunday Night Football, I'm trying to turn around the waiver column in 24 hours, which is basically a request to understand the entire league and what's going to happen next week in 24 hours. So it's an all-night affair. There is no time for me to have fun on Sundays with everyone and drink. It's just literally jotting and talking about football all day long, which I'm grateful for. So unfortunately, could not join you and the boys, but yeah, that's what's going on right now. The waiver column is up right now for week 10 at 4for4.com. It's usually up at least a hard, rough draft around Monday afternoons, and then I will edit it through Wednesday night just to make sure it's updated for the first wave of injury reports, not to mention all the news we hear trickle out on Monday and Tuesday.
It's nice not being paid to do this stuff, just kind of doing it for fun, because I can go out all day Sunday and just look at everybody else's information and articles, enjoy myself at the bar, enjoy myself with my buddies and my family and all my friends, and then come back and read awesome content. And I do watch it. At this bar we were at, a couple bars, they had all the TVs on, so I was able to watch this game and the Bears game and that game. And sometimes I just watch the Red Zone with another TV at my buddy Joe's house. On top of there, the Bears game will be on, the Red Zone will be on the bottom TV. So it's cool just going out all the time and having a good time and not having to worry about like any kind of deadlines and stuff. But I tell you what, man, I understand that it's a job as far as you're concerned, but the amount of time that you guys put into doing this stuff, man, it looks like just one paper of just your waiver wire ads or the injury guy or everybody else on 4for4 that has all their awesome content on there. But we really appreciate all the stuff you put in, because having that early information the first day of the week it's gold, So thank you very much for doing that, John.
Oh, thank you for reading and listening. I always appreciate it. We go back and forth on Twitter sometimes. And I remember that what I tell you, you've already listened to from a show or read from an article. So no, I appreciate you. You should tell the bosses that too, actually, because they're the ones who forget that it doesn't just magically appear off the top of our heads. Like, it actually takes so much homework to jot this stuff down and to think about it pragmatically for everyone to communicate it to them. So yes, it's just an ongoing process, but it's okay. I love doing it.
Hey, John Paulson, get my guy off the books here. He's got to go out and have fun with me on Sundays and watch football. Okay, give him a break a little bit, all right? So, what's your favorite? I mean, I know you do the waiver wire column, and it's a lot of work. But what's your favorite thing in fantasy football? Rankings, podcasting, the waiver wire. I add the writing. Like, what do you like doing the most?
I think I do enjoy the research. I love having movies or music on in the background and just getting lost in the numbers because they all tell a story. But what I love most about, like, what I think my strength is communicating those numbers. Because a lot of people will take the usage of a player, like we could all do the work and find the usage of a player, but you then have to translate that to ways that helps people. Maybe that means an extra dollar or two here and there in DFS. Maybe it turns into a win in your league that eventually becomes actually taking down your redraft league. Maybe it's DFS, so you win that extra bottle of wine or a night out with your partner, whatever the case. That's what I enjoy doing. I enjoy translating everything to where it actually helps people, not just regurgitating it because it's a number I see. And I think a lot of times that's what a lot of people do is just take the number, they share it, but it doesn't mean anything. It's not actually like a number that helps you whatsoever. Like CJ Stroud, for example, awesome. Great story. CJ Stroud is amazing at football. We saw that coming from a mile away. But like 470 and 5 touchdowns, that's the results. That's the number. What does that even mean in context like this upcoming week when he plays the Bengals and now this Lou Anarumo defense who's running man coverage at a top 10 rate? I'm a little more worried now this upcoming week. So it's just about communicating those kind of things and why I would be worried. I guess another example would be for DFS last week. And that's what I also love about wearing many hats, whether it's redraft, dynasty, waivers, betting, DFS, underdog, best ball. It's all the same information. It's just a matter about how you parse the information. And so, like, for this week, I know Adam Thielen in DFS was a prominent like tournament or cash game option. Tournament's always fine, whatever. But he was a big deal, and everyone was just citing his rates on the season. But if you stepped back, and I wrote about this in my DFS column on Saturday at 44.com, I was worried about the matchup as a whole because Adam Thielen was literally wide receiver 50 and target per route run against zone coverage. And the Colts lead the league in zone coverage on 87% of their defensive snaps. So rather than just citing or regurgitating, as I say, Adam Thielen's usage on the entire year, like, you play this as a week-to-week game and you say, oh, this is actually a terrible matchup for Adam Thielen. Thus, the pivot, if we were trying to make everyone a little more money, is the Colts defense and Jonathan Taylor or Zach Moss, whichever way you want to go. But that's the correlation I think you should do. And I've been wrong a lot this year. Don't get me wrong, but that was one I was right on because, again, it's a week-to-week game. So I think I just enjoy doing that stuff because, like, every time you sit down at the poker table, playing fantasy football week to week is entirely different than the offseason, where come August, we're just saying the same thing over and over again because we've said it since March. Like, it's just all the same stuff. But yeah, week to week during the redraft season is what gets me excited because it's a different game every week.
JT, you do a lot of DFS stuff, right?
Yeah, I haven't done as much this year as I have in the past. But, looking at those numbers, those are always the things I like to see what guys are doing, like the matchup like that. Because I'm one of those people. I tell people I see those numbers on Twitter or on X all the time, and you see these graphs. And I'm like, I'm sure that's a great graph, but like, holy crap, there's so much stuff going on in that graph that it's hard for me to comprehend. How does that help me in fantasy? So like John says, when you have someone who actually puts it on paper in an article and makes it make sense to me, that's where I get the help because there's so many numbers out there. I mean, you could get numbered to death with everything, but figuring out how to use those numbers to make a decision, like start this guy, get this guy in DFS, like those to me are the things that make the big difference, because if not, it's just numbers upon numbers upon numbers, and you got to try to figure out how does this number make a difference to me in my decision making.
Yeah, it's Google Translate from stats to us being able to decipher it in a way that's easy to digest. So again, much appreciated, John Paulson. Give this guy a break. He's helping everybody out, man. So, tell me about a day away from the desk? Content creation, family, pets, hobbies, all that kind of stuff. What do you do to kind of, besides sitting back and listening to music? What do you do for like having a good time and all that kind of stuff?
Living in Chicago, no family. They're all in Texas and staying there, small town. I'm never going back because I hate the heat, so not interested. But actually, like my Saturday is the only free day. I keep my Friday nights and my Saturdays sacred. And those days, it's usually one night I'll try to relax just to let everything go. And I enjoy cooking. I love cooking. So usually one of those nights will be an evening with making cocktails for myself and cooking at home. But also Saturdays, I usually get out for long runs. I train for ultra marathons. So working my way up to a 50 miler next year. I've already run one 30 miler and the Toronto Marathon this season. And then I'm doing another 30 miler in Libertyville around us, John. I'm going to Libertyville for the winter 30 miler the first week in December, which is also my birthday. So that's kind of what I do on Saturdays. I just go out there for, 10 to 20 mile runs. And I just love being out there because I put on football podcast. I put on like economics podcast. I do audiobooks sometimes. And then I stop by one of my favorite breweries on the way back and just kind of have a couple beers to myself. And then I can be home around 4 or 5 p.m. on Saturday. And from then I can take a shower and just try to figure out the rest of the evening. So I love my Saturdays because I don't pay attention to my phone. It's just all, I lay my college bets on Friday night or Saturday morning. And from there, I just put my phone in my pouch and I go running, and it's the best.
It's a great.
What's your favorite brewery?
My favorite. So I like all the breweries. I'm a big beer guy and big hazy IPA guy. But I think there's a brewery in Evanston. Is this a local podcast or does it reach everywhere?
All three people that listen, are good. So.
Okay, so for Chicagoans, I think it's called the Little Juice Coop out of Double Clutch Brewery in Evanston is one of my favorite hazy IPAs in the entire city. Probably right next to Son of Juice, which is the cliche answer because they put that on draft everywhere, and Son of Juice is incredible. But yes, Little Juice Coop, Double Clutch Brewery, shout out to them. I never leave any Friday or Saturday without a 4-pack.
JT owns a brewery out by where are you at, JT?
In Muhammad, Illinois, just outside Champaign. So JT Walker's brewery, but also you're talking about Son of Juice. That's what I got back here, Maplewood Neon. Yeah. So Maplewood Brewery up in Chicago. So I use it because Chicago breweries, but also I like the M for the Maplewood matches all my Missouri stuff.
I'm such a sucker for anything Maplewood. I'm so biased because everything they touch is gold. My partner also loves their spritzes and their homemade cocktails in a can, which are also like 8 to 12%. They make them strong. So we are big fans of Maplewood. But JT Walker's, I'll definitely check it out.
Yeah, I've been there a couple times. What's your favorite food when you're sitting around writing all the stuff on Sunday afternoon?
So I try to keep all my decisions from especially through Sunday through Tuesday quite easy. So I don't get distracted and lose track of the goal. Because I do like to have mostly all of my notes done by the time I wake up Wednesday morning so that any show I go on from Wednesday to Friday, and there are quite a few of them, I'm ready to go for any matchup or any question you ask me about betting, DFS, or whatever else. So from Sunday to Tuesday, I keep it simple and usually cook ahead of time. There's this window. I have the days planned out by the hour, basically, including naps and runs or just alternate options and what to do with my hobbies. But there is a window from Monday from 6 p.m. to kickoff after I do the quick 10 to 15 minute waiver spot I do for 4-4. I usually use that window to meal prep for the entire week, and I'm usually coming down to the end of it around Sunday. So now that I'm in running training season, it's a lot of different pulled chicken sandwiches that I'll make ahead of time, just a giant bucket's worth, and just pile on chicken and bacon because I have a little what do they call them? Not toaster, but toaster ovens that I can just reheat any sandwich. So chicken, bacon, avocado is one of my go-to sandwiches. I also do a lot of roasted vegetable wraps with hummus and habanero sauce is one of my go-tos. And then a tuna sandwich. I'll prep a lot of tuna ahead of time. So tuna, boiled, hard-boiled eggs, sliced spring onions, couple peppers, red onions and capers tossed in like a chipotle mayo, and then I'll just slap that on wheat bread sometimes too. Those are like the easiest, the quickest meals.
Sweet. It's like food porn. I have a tuna fish, or there's a Mariano's bass. I'll go get some salmon.
Hell yeah.
I'll make that. And my neighbor made me this huge jar. It's habanero, raspberry, and some other kind of blackberry jelly. It is the best. It is so good. It's fresh. It's awesome. I used like 3/4 of a jar in the last month. I'm like, dude, how do I get more of this? He's like, I'll make more next year, but I only made a little bit. He just started making it this year, but it is so good on everything, man.
I'll make also a lot of, because I can make my own red sauce, pasta sauce from scratch. And so if I just make that ahead of time, I can usually then just cook the pasta fresh off and toss it in the sauce. So it's only like a 10-minute process. So that's also another one I'll do ahead of time. But yeah, I'm a big spice guy. I live next to Tony's World Market here. And so they offer a lot of Hispanic and Thai chilies. And so I'll usually pick some dry ones up and just rehydrate them with whatever meats I cook, and then see like what kind of spice I can deal with. And I found some, I think they're called the Guadalajara, I believe it's what it's called. I'm not pronouncing that right, but those are the ones that will rock your world. And so now it's become, how many can I put in my meat before I just can't eat it anymore?
Very good, very good. All right, let's get to some commissioner questions now. What's a format that you would encourage somebody you really enjoy playing in right now? Like something that's out of the norm. Like, a lot of we take Superflex for granted, like it's the norm, but a lot of people don't play Superflex. A lot of people don't do tight end premium. A lot of people don't do a lot of things. But what's something that you've enjoyed from the normal old school leagues that you enjoy playing right now?
For me, I think the best formats still are Superflex, short benches. Even when I have to make the decision, I have found fantasy leagues most fun whenever you are forcing managers to make choices. Like some of us right now in deeper leagues are still holding on to a guy like, let's say Marvin Mims, right? Like not dropping him because we know if he breaks out, he's going to win leagues at the receiver position. But on shorter benches, a lot of rosters can't hold him. Whereas other winning rosters who don't need the bench space because they're top heavy can hold him and hope he breaks out in the fantasy playoffs. I love forcing decisions like that. I guess another option would be like a Jaleel McLaughlin or I'm trying to think, even someone like DeMario Douglas, right? Like Douglas doesn't have a ceiling. He hasn't reached 60 yards or a touchdown in any game because he's just a little slot possession receiver with a low ADOT. Not a sexy player whatsoever. But there's some rosters who need that upside, or not upside. They need that floor, like a Michael Thomas. No ceiling, but at least he has a 50-yard floor. So whereas winning rosters don't have to put themselves in that position. So I just love shorter benches because it forces everyone to make choices based on their own needs.
Just enough to keep guys like Jalen Tolbert and all them also awesome up-and-comers coming up, right?
Yep. Exactly.
Nobody likes Jalen Tolbert except me, so... but I'll keep him everywhere.
Yeah, I mean, they are these past 2 games since they're bye, they are using him more. The issue is like they gave Michael Gallup that contract because they're morons. But they gave Michael Gallup that large contract just last year, so they really don't have the room unless they take Brandon Cooks off of it, which they should. Brandon Cooks has been terrible this year. They don't have the room for Jalen Tolbert to even develop, so they just kind of have, as Jerry Jones calls them, progress blockers in Tolbert's way, regardless of if he's developing or not.
He's a good hold right now for sure. I'm buying him everywhere. People are getting sick of him. I'll be more, but he's starting to creep up the depth chart. So it's kind of scaring me now where I don't have him, but it is what it is. All right. So last week was trade deadlines in most weeks, and there's some pretty sketchy trades that were either offered or accepted in a lot of leagues. But at what point in time does a commissioner have the right to step in and veto a trade? Should the league members be allowed to vote on this early trade to pass it or deny the offers? I mean, are you ever in leagues where you just kind of? I'm not in very many online leagues, and the ones I do don't have trade like this fishbowl and stuff like that. You can't trade. They're more like what do you call them?
Charity leagues and
Charity
stuff.
leagues,
Yeah.
So, like, when leagues, what is a commissioner? To me, a commissioner, his only power is to just oversee the league, make sure it's running right. If somebody makes a mistake, blah blah blah. How many leagues were you in where there was trade deadline situations that happened where it caused a problem in your league? And who's is it the commissioner's job to veto trades or wait 24 hours and accept trades, or how does that work in most of your leagues?
I hate trade vetoes with a passion. And so in most of my leagues, we still allow them, but it's like a 24-hour process and everyone knows the deal. Like, we're all adults. Everyone can make their own decision. Most of the time vetoes happen out of spite. So it's not even for the right reasons, which is why, like, if you told me just to have a blanket, I never usually try to have a blanket statement, but if you just said black or white, yes or no, I would say get rid of vetoes altogether. Don't want them at all in leagues. Because what happens is, and you see this a lot of times when people ask you trade questions, like, you can't even really ask trade questions on the surface because you need to understand the context of everyone's roster. Everyone's doing so many things differently. Like, for instance, I traded the other day in an industry league, the great Edwin Porras' league, for the fantasy, or he works for Fantasy Points now. I traded to James Coe, Amon-Ra St. Brown for Raheem Mostert and Nico Collins. And it was because it's a 2-flex bench, and I was literally like piecing together that second flex, whereas I still have strong receivers, and I have all the confidence in the world in Mostert and Nico Collins being enough to where I can flex them, or I can start both of them every single week because they're not even matchup dependent. I'm just playing them every week. So to me, that was a win-win because he was improving his wide receiver, getting more top-heavy spot, whereas I wanted that extra starter because I was losing points weekly on the second flex. So again, maybe on the surface, someone says, oh, he's getting the better player, Amon-Ra St. Brown. And you're right, he's getting probably the top-heaviest player, but to me, my roster worked out better with that. And so I just hate vetoes. Everyone's trying to do their own thing.
In a less professional league, that would cause a hornet's nest stir up like you wouldn't believe.
I know people would be going crazy on that, even though what you explained is exactly the reasoning, which I know we've talked about this in the past. For me in my leagues, if there's any kind of question, I usually have Commish power on the veto because I don't let people vote. Because again, like John said, you just get people who are spiteful and are mad that they didn't make the trade first, or they're like, well, I could have offered you a better one. Like, well, why didn't you? And, and then you get people doing that. So I always just leave for me. But if there's any kind of question, I just talk to the guys for that exact reason. Like John said, well, I needed an extra flex. So for me, this works out better. And I'm like, okay, unless it's some egregious thing, I just don't understand how people veto one. I saw one the other day where someone vetoed it because it was like a 6-player trade. And it got vetoed because one of the guys was trading Tua for CJ Stroud. It was like the two main pieces at QBs. And the commish said that Tua was too valuable. He couldn't be traded for like a rookie quarterback. He's like, but I like CJ Stroud better. He's like, long term. I'm like, that's a ridiculous veto. I'm like, if your guy wants to take the hit on it, take that. Maybe he hates Tua. I mean, I made a bunch of trades in the offseason for Tua for people that just thought he was going to be hurt and be bad. And if you went back and looked at the trades I made this summer, people would probably be like, that's an insane trade. I can't believe you did that. But again, it all has to do with timing when it is. Unless something is just egregious, I mean, teams can do what they want with their team. I just don't understand why anyone would make someone else not be able to make the move they want to make.
It doesn't even make sense too, because Stroud is in that same tier as for redraft leagues I'm talking about, but Stroud is the QB4 in points per game right now in fantasy. He's actually been more important for fantasy than Tua. Tua hasn't had back-to-back QB1 weeks at any point this year. So Stroud's actually been better for fantasy. Why that was vetoed in the first place is already the incorrect process. Then the reasoning is also incorrect. It's just ignorant reasoning. And then also Stroud should be considered in that Tua, Prescott, Sam Howell tier the rest of the season, given the context of where we're at with quarterbacks in the league right now. There aren't 12 good ones anyways, even for fantasy. That's why like Will Levis is now considered a fringe QB1 because at least his arm can pop. And a lot of these guys are bad. So yeah, it's just terrible. Vetoes.
Yeah, and the main thing is the commish. You want to make sure people are staying in the league. And this guy basically said, "Hey, I got vetoed in this league. Like, I'm dropping out of this league now at the end of the season." Like, he's like, "I can't believe I'm getting, vetoed." Then that's the thing is, that's what you don't want. You don't want bad trades, bad things happening, vetoes where guys now drop out of the league and it ruins the league.
Yeah, that's a league killer. Exactly. Absolutely. All right, cool. Thanks for chiming in with that. Injuries this week, quarterback position, Daniel Jones, torn ACL, should be about a year. We just saw this Kyler Murray come off the same situation, week 13 last year. Now he's coming back around week 10 this year. So Jalen Hurts, Philly, the bye couldn't have come at a better time for his little slight knee injury, re-aggravation. Running back Cam Akers tore both of his Achilles now. This was the second one. This was once a death sentence injury, but now the miracle of modern science, who knows what's going to happen. He already came back from the first one. Wide receiver Christian Watson, Packers, landed funny. Should be back by week 10, hopefully. Treylon Burks, concussion, looked bad. Maybe in for an extended stay on the bench as a result of just the optics of that concussion. KJ Osborne, also concussion. It all depends on how he heals from the concussion protocol. Josh Palmer, knees on IR. We're stuck watching Quentin Johnson for the next couple of weeks now to catch balls like he never caught a ball before. Josh Downs, Colts, JT's guy, lingering knee issue. You could keep him out until after week 12 bye, the Colts bye, which is probably the smart decision. Dallas Goedert, Eagles forearm. I listened to Dr. Chow's show, and he said something about on his podcast that this could possibly only be a 1 or 2 week injury, best case scenario. So don't trade him away right now if you don't have to. Just the medicals of modern science again. Maybe they could do something. It all depends on the severity of this injury, but the players have come back from this injury before and played a week or two later. So now we have the luxury of having the person who does the weekly waivers for 4 for 4 on our show. So if you don't mind taking over the waiver section, John, that would be fantastic.
Sure. And one for every position is what you wanted to discuss. Yep. And I'll go ahead and start with who I think is the best streaming option this week and someone I'm interested in rest of season, and that is Will Levis. Because solely by a matchup, look at what this Bucs defense has allowed since returning from their bye over the last month. Jared Goff on the road for over 8 yards per attempt and 20-plus fantasy points. Then to Desmond Ridder, they allowed 10 yards per attempt, followed by zombie shoulder Josh Allen 2 weeks ago on Thursday night, also spiked them for 8 yards per attempt and 20-plus fantasy points. And then, of course, this past week, C.J. Stroud, 470 and 5 touchdowns. Absolutely brutal. And they're allowing a league-high 51% completion rate on throws 20 yards downfield. And here comes Will Levis, who over the last 2 weeks has attempted a league-high 28% of his passes 20 yards downfield. So I think Will Levis is in an elite spot in this matchup opposite the Bucs secondary. Where do y'all have him viewed in dynasty leagues right now?
I can take this now. I just did a little 3-minute video about, I think he's like probably anywhere from quarterback 11 to 14, probably in that area. That's where I have him at. A low QB1, high QB2, someone that just with his arm strength alone will keep the Titans in pretty much every game. So on top of that, if you watched him play, him just dropping the ball, those teardrop throws right in his own coverage, like it looks like a second-year quarterback already. And I'm not talking about, the plays of DeAndre Hopkins that were bombs that DeAndre Hopkins made, that a lot of players couldn't make, but just his recognition of getting blitzed to hell last week or 2 weeks ago and still making things, even last week also, and still making these last-minute changes. The only thing I don't like for him that I said is that he doesn't set his feet when he throws the ball half the time. You can tell when he does set his feet, when he doesn't set his feet, and when he does set his feet. But even when he doesn't set his feet, his arm is strong enough to get the ball to where it needs to be without setting his feet. But his problem is he dances around the pocket too much sometimes instead of having like a fight or flight reaction. He needs to either go, or you can't run around the pocket in figure eights waiting for someone to get open. You need to find out the pocket's collapsing, you got to move, or the pocket's, you found a spot and you know when to throw the ball, get the ball out. Those are my only 2 flaws I see with him. But I see him reading defenses pretty well, and the arm strength, he can throw the ball from the goal line and probably hit the 20-yard line on the other side of the field. So I'm good with that. JT, where do you think you fall?
Yeah, and we know I'm on record as a Will Levis hater. I just wasn't not a fan of his coming out. But I will say this is why I was down on Levis coming into the draft, and this is something I've said over and over again. Like you said, he does have the big arm, and I said he's got an NFL arm. But the issue for me is because he has such a big arm, he's going to use that arm in situations where he's trying to force balls. To me, I was worried about him being a turnover machine in the NFL, just the way of him forcing balls, trying to use his arm. And like John, like you said, a big one in college. If you watch his tape, he did not set his feet a ton. A lot of his throws were him falling back, falling away, even near the end zone, where he's not stepping into throws and using that arm. He's falling away and just using full arm shoulder strength and not getting his whole body into it. So those were my worries about him coming out. And my worries was because of that would lead to a bunch of turnovers for him. Now, he's been a smart rookie, and what do you do when you're a rookie? Throw it to your best player. Throw it to your best player all the time, and that's what he's done. He's thrown DeAndre Hopkins. I mean, smart move by him. Like John said, this matchup moving forward against Tampa, it looks like a juicy matchup. If you got Will Levis, you want to play him because it looks like you get a lot of big plays in there. But I don't, again, for how much I've hated on Levis, that's been my biggest issue. He's played pretty well so far. He didn't look great against the Steelers, and the Steelers do not have a top end passing defense. I mean, they can blitz they get pressure, but their secondary is real bad. Outside of Joey Porter Jr., their secondaries looked awful this year. So I think people are on a high side of Levis. I'm a little nervous post this matchup, just kind of what he's going to do. And if he can keep away, if he stays away from the turnovers, I think you've got something. If he turns into a turnover machine all of a sudden at the end of the year, I think you're in trouble.
Yeah, with Minka out that game, he could tell that there was, he found some openings. But when he threw that pass to Josh Weil in the back of the end zone, you could see Josh Weil was open like a second and a half before that, but the defense closed in. They knew what Will Levis was doing, and they were there it was picked. But on the way there, that defense read the whole thing. He's got to stop those kind of throws. But he was forcing some the last couple of seconds of the game. I'll give him a waiver for that one. But what about running backs this week, John?
In most leagues, Devin Singletary's already taken, and that is contingent on Dameon Pierce being out. But whereas Tampa Bay was a miserable matchup for running backs, we knew that. Was not interested in Devin Singletary. Behind the scenes, still handling 15 to 16 backfield touches. That's an amazing usage for Singletary. We want that every time. And now it's a Bengals defense that has allowed the highest rate of 10-yard runs in the league to opposing running backs. A significantly better spot for Singletary. So if Singletary's out there, I think just in terms of running backs on the waiver wire who provide immediate value in week 10, he's the best option. Having said that, as a long-term stash, I think Keaton Mitchell is the play. And I don't even look to, the big run in the second half, 9 carries, 138 yards, touchdown, because it was all in blowout game script. What I like the most about Keaton Mitchell's usage is that in the first half alone, before it became a blowout, he was part of a timeshare. He had 4 touches, Gus Edwards had 4, and Justice Hill had 4. So Mitchell worked himself into a true backfield rotation. I still worry about his ceiling ultimately weekly because Gus Edwards' goal line role is not going away. Like Edwards has scored 6 touchdowns on 8 carries inside the 5-yard line. He's too good at the goal line role to ever take him out of it. Having said that, if you saw Mitchell play on Sunday, he pops every single time he touches the ball. And now he's in quite literally the number 1 offense in the entire league. So I'm excited about Keaton Mitchell, even if it's only for 8 to 10 touches per game. Given how thin the waiver wire is, I think he's my favorite long-term matchup or option this week.
I think everybody in my league had Keaton Mitchell on the roster at least once. I kept cutting him. He got hurt, and then he wouldn't see any touches, and then he got hurt again. And then it was like, oh, come on. So it kind of sucks that I don't have the patience in dynasty leagues, even with 30-man rosters on 12-team leagues. I don't know why I had him twice already, and I just couldn't. I just figured someone that small that is undrafted would be someone that never going to pan out anyway. So, but this is what happens when you don't have patience in dynasty leagues. But wide receivers,
as poor as the experiment has gone so far, I still think Quentin Johnston in redraft leagues is the number 1 pickup. So for context, Quentin Johnston hasn't been on the field Let's start there. But also now, in his first game last night, without Josh Palmer, who is on IR now, Quentin Johnston literally led the team in routes run, a season-high route on 95% of dropbacks. Not only that, but we weren't expecting him to do anything. Just the fact that the Jets have allowed literally 5 fewer fantasy points per game to opposing wideouts, the toughest defense in the league for opposing wideouts in fantasy football. We didn't expect anyone but Keenan Allen to get there. So it's okay that Johnston, quote unquote, failed last night. But now that we know he has this every down role, I'm certainly interested in seeing how he grows. It may not lead to anything ultimately. Maybe he doesn't end up earning targets over Austin Eckler and Keenan Allen at any point, but at least the usage is there. So I do still have confidence in him moving forward.
Yeah, I get it. I'm slowly trying to send like lowball offers to get him right now, figuring that people are just getting frustrated. But the Jets are they're a terrible matchup for anybody. The defense is so good. They just if it wasn't for if Aaron Rodgers was on this team, they'd probably be undefeated right now. It's just what Zach Wilson's doing to that team is unfair. So I got a tight end question before we get to the tight ends now.
Sure.
Some Nino Pena. Do you guys see a constant role in the Saints offense for Taysom? Any thoughts on him?
Yes. Taysom, I actually consider alongside Mark Andrews, T.J. Hawkinson, and Sam Laporta the rest of the season, because these past 2 weeks have happened with Juwan Johnson back in the lineup, and all they did was up Taysom Hill's role. And I think that's because they understand Derek Carr is terrible. Derek Carr was literally last in the league in completion rate inside the red zone, and he's been terrible in the red zone for his entire career. So I don't know what they expected they were getting when they signed him to a big deal. But their response now has been to take Derek Carr off the field in the red zone, and that's how they score points. And you can only do that with Taysom Hill coming in instead. And that's why the last 2 weeks in particular, 12 red zone carries, 6 carries inside the 10-yard line, and then as we saw this past week, even had a touchdown pass and receiving touchdown inside the 5-yard line. They're using them now inside the 20. No other tight end gets that kind of usage, not to mention the dropbacks. And at least in this past week, I route on 48% of dropbacks. So no, it's all Taysom Hill from here. He's the top 5 tight end the rest of the season because they know they have to keep him on the field to score points.
That's a great answer. Great answer.
Yeah, I was going to say, one of my favorite bets, and I just missed it the Sunday that I've been kind of throwing out every week, is if you can two-player parlay, Taysom Hill 2 touchdowns, Gus Edwards 2 touchdowns, the payout is massive. And those are 2 guys getting a ton of looks down there. And obviously, I just missed it with Hill throwing a touchdown and catching one instead of running for one. But that's those guys are getting just a ton of usage in the red zone. And just like John said. And so, yeah, I'm all over if I can get Taysom Hill, and if I have him, I'm playing him. And even Juwan Johnson showed that he had a little bit. They're finally working him back in because I've got him in a couple leagues that he could be usable as a second tight end or a flex play in deeper leagues. So, but yeah, Taysom Hill, I mean, you can tell they want to get him involved all over the place on the goal line.
Who's your tight end for this week, John?
I think, though, in terms of who's available, because Taysom Hill, everyone caught on the past couple of weeks since without Juwan Johnson, he was popping anyhow as a third wide receiver. I think the tight end to turn to now is Cade Otton, because Cade Otton was getting the usage. He's run a route on over 80% of dropbacks in every game since week 3. The problem was he wasn't seeing targets. But now the last 3 games, he's seen a 14.5% target share, just over 15%, and this past week, a team-high 30% target share. Now it's literally elite tight end usage from Baker Mayfield, and no one's coming for that job from Otton. So based on who is available, not to mention the matchup, since the Titans are a pass funnel, since you can't run on them, I think Cade Otton, both this week and moving forward, is the best option available.
We were just talking about him at the bar before that game started about how Cade Otton's a buy right now, and sure enough, he goes off and gets 2 touchdowns this week. And I'm like, God, I know he's stealing all Chris Godwin's targets too. It's maddening as a Chris Godwin owner, but it is what it is. So
I'm an Otton guy. I have Otton on almost all my dynasty leagues that he was available. I just thought he was a guy that would fit that system, and he's been, you've been able to play him here and there in matchups depending on what's going on. But yeah, seeing his usage go up here the last couple of weeks has been very encouraging for someone that has him in a lot of leagues.
Yeah. Well, thanks a lot for contributing there, John. Now, what we got going on, as everybody knows, we do a quick around the league real fast. We're about 10 minutes behind right now because all of us love the app, and that's just what happens. But so we're going to go through each team, probably 15 to 20 seconds on each one of the questions I asked. You guys belt out an answer. We'll try to get through all 32 as fast as possible. And we'll start with you, JT. Bears, where's the Roshan Johnson where we're all promised is going to take over this backfield? The guy I took in my rookie draft instead of Sam Laporta.
Man, the problem has been Foreman has looked so good.
Yes.
And people forget how good Dante Foreman was coming out of college in the high upside of him. And then he had all the injuries. But, man, he has looked really good running the football. And it's just been one of those things getting Roshan. It's been hard to get him in there with the injuries. And then now Khalil Herbert is supposed to be coming back off IR. I had high upside for Roshan this year, and I'm definitely tempering expectations the rest of the season. I just don't think he's going to get enough touches the rest of the way with the way that Foreman's playing and the way that Herbert played before the injury.
John, Bengals, is Joe Burrow that good, or is the team around him just what elevates him to be good?
Joe Burrow is that good. And we've seen now he's returned from his bye completely healthy. That's also why the Bengals were my side heading into Sunday night, not only because the Bills defense has fallen apart over the last month without both Matt Milano and Tre'Davious White, but just under pressure. Joe Burrow leads the league in completion rate these past 3 games since they returned from bye. He's a totally different player now. So, yes, I have all the confidence in the world in Burrow and the Bengals in this spot against the Texans, even if Jamar Chase is still out from that back injury.
JT, Bills, Dalton Kincaid, 11 targets against the Bengals. What happened to Khalil Shakir breakout?
Yeah, I think this is what people thought they were going to get when Kincaid was drafted in the first round. Everybody's like, "Hey, he's going to be the slot guy." I mean, obviously, Gabe Davis is not going to get just a ton of targets. We've seen that over time. They just looked at Kincaid the whole time. I thought Shakir might, after that one good game, they might work him in a little bit more, but it doesn't look like it. It looks like they're right back to Kincaid after the 1 game Shakir breakout.
To me, I don't get the whole. I just thought that Kincaid was going to be like the difference of like what am I? I don't know why I'm blanking. The Chiefs running back. It was I don't know what the. Clyde Edwards-Helaire. I thought he was going to be like CEH, a guy who was drafted too high, didn't have that much, they drafted him high. He went to a team with a great offense, just kind of somebody that everybody overvalued because of all the situations. So I stay away from everywhere I possibly could, just figuring that Shakir or somebody's going to get or Dawson Knox would be in blocking and catch the passes, and Kincaid would go out once in a while as a possible slot replacement or a part-time slot player. But I penciled him in as like a CEH kind of overdraft, and I was completely wrong on that. So, John, Broncos, out of the bye, which Broncos player do you want on your roster rest of the season at either position?
Oh, it's Javonte Williams. It's not even close. We saw before the bye, since he returned from injury, Javonte Williams' share of backfield touches increased in every game. 47.5%, 62%, and then against the Chiefs in week 8, a season high 77% of the team's backfield touches, including 30 touches overall. Now, from week 10 on, so this week moving forward, the Broncos have the 4th easiest projected schedule of opposing run defenses to close the year, and that's the kind of offense they want to be under Sean Payton. So Javonte Williams is absolutely going to get people to fantasy playoffs and probably help them win their leagues.
Yeah, he had like 26 carries last game. That was ridiculous. JT, Browns. This Browns team is the real deal with the healthy Watson barking out the signals, or was the play against Dallas Cardinals team just a perfect storm at the right time?
Well, I mean, throwing my boy Clayton Tune against the Wolves in his first start, you start him against the Browns defense. I was like, this is going to end badly. I was hoping for him. I hoping he'd have a good game, but I just did not have a lot of confidence. I don't think Watson looked that good again. He got lucked out with a play he should have been picked off that deflected up in the air and ended up being a touchdown to Cooper. I still think this Browns team defense is really, really good. It was a perfect spot for them. The offense, I'm just not 100% sold on Watson yet this year if he's going to get it fully back together. This team's only going to go as far as he ends up, how well he plays. So the defense is going to keep him in every game. They're going to be in the mix, but unless Watson really shows up on offense, I just have a hard time with this tough schedule for the Browns, seeing them, really pulling away and being one of the top tier AFC teams.
John, Buccaneers, why does Baker Mayfield hate Chris Godwin?
I wish he got more open often. Now, Chris Godwin was coming on strong, probably the 2 games sandwiched around their bye plus coming out of it. But at the same time, it's just that Mike Evans is the one who gets deep open. Plus, what's happening is that Rachaad White has a double-digit target share in every game since week 2. He never gets there rushing. Like, he got there this past week only because he fell forward on the goal line twice. But, like, in terms of exploding behind the line of scrimmage, Rachaad White's one of the league's worst running backs. But he's getting that consistent weekly volume through the air, and that's why he's getting there. So he's offering a weekly high floor, and that's pretty much taking away from Chris Godwin underneath, because that's all Rachaad White, and now all of a sudden Kate Otten.
This is 100% the sell week. Rachaad White, there's no way he's going to have a better game than this. I know he's getting the pass volume, but in Dynasty, like, this is a guy who cannot run through the tackles.
Oh, yeah.
The only thing he does is get 5 or 6 or 7 or, dump off passes every game, because that's what Baker Mayfield does, is check down. It was a perfect storm of a check down quarterback to a good receiving running back. And I just feel like he's never going to have a game this good again. But early in the season, he was a 5 or 6 point guy, a couple pass catches, and that was it. Last couple games, he's been pretty hot. So I just feel like I'm not sure he's the answer for next year, the long-term answer anyway. I just feel like if you're like in a situation where you might not make the playoffs, this is a perfect time to sell for some like a first-round pick or somebody who's an in-win now to get him off your team. JT, Cardinals, they really don't have a choice but to start Kyler at this point. I mean, they said they're going to, but is it the right move at 1-7?
I'm not sold that it's the right move, especially unless they think he's 100% healthy, totally clear. I wouldn't want to rush him at all, especially with this team's record. But the only thing I can think is new coaching staff. They want to see, how they can work with Kyler. Can they make it work? Because again, you go into next offseason, do you keep Kyler? Do you go quarterback? If you're the Cardinals, we've seen them do it in the past. I mean, they drafted a quarterback, and then the very next year turn around and drafted Kyler Murray. So it's not like they haven't done it in the past. Obviously, new regime.
Josh Rosen.
But yep, Josh Rosen, my guy, buried me in some dynasty leagues. But yes, they turned around and did it the next year. So I guess if you want to see about the injury and how healthy he is and how he works with this new coaching staff, I guess so. But I wouldn't be rushing him back at all if I was the Cardinals.
Yeah, I was watching Chargers. I was watching Good Morning Football this morning. There's a guy in there that said the big topic was Justin Herbert elite. Do you think Justin Herbert's elite?
Yes, but I've always, going back to the offseason, I even wrote about it. I hated the fact that people were suddenly increasing Herbert's depth of target by simply gaining Kellen Moore and losing Joe Lombardi, because that's not how football works. The issue has always been that the Chargers' best receiver is Austin Eckler. If you looked downfield and saw Jalen Guyton, you too would instead dump the ball off and finish dead last in the league in depth of target. You'd never throw downfield. So this has never been a Lombardi issue. It's literally that their best receivers are check down players, which is also why, since they've lost Mike Williams, they've been one of the least explosive offenses in the league, because they have no one who can go downfield. This goes back to Quentin Johnson too. Quentin Johnson was one of the nation's worst downfield receivers at TCU. Out of 120 receivers with at least 100 targets in the Power 5, Quentin Johnson finished 9th with the 9th fewest contested catches among all of them. He literally, like Chase Claypool, cannot get open downfield and then can't battle you despite his size. You're just pigeonholing him wrong in the NFL if you think that. But what we've seen is some promising, not results so far, but like against the Bears, Justin Herbert had a 5.5-yard depth of target. He was 34th among all quarterbacks in week 8 because his best receivers are underneath and can create yak. So if that's how they're going to use Quentin Johnson, outside of, playing the Jets, who even stumped Josh Allen, Jalen Hurts, and Patrick Mahomes, held them all to their season low in yards this year, then I think Quentin Johnson and Justin Herbert can still be elite and very successful.
If you took Tank Dell's mind and heart and put it into Quentin Johnson, it would be the perfect football player.
Tank Dale doesn't admittedly play bigger than Quentin Johnson. Yeah.
Yeah, absolutely. JT, Chiefs. Are the Chiefs actually a better all-around football team when Travis Kelce is not Superman, putting the whole team on his shoulders?
I mean, I think when Kelce plays really well, I think it does help this team. Now, anytime you can get other guys involved, that always, for the long term is a better move. The problem is, who are the other guys you're getting involved? I mean, too often you're going to see MVS dropping a ball, Watson dropping a touchdown. I know it seems like, hey, hitting the one guy all the time is not great for you, but when Kelce has big games, it feels like the Chiefs have big games. So if I'm Mahomes, I'm still peppering him as much as possible.
I traded for Rashee Rice in almost every league. I'm waiting for him to really, really kind of break out.
I like Rice a lot.
But everybody's just and there's 13 receivers catching 2 passes every week, and it's like, this is so frustrating. Yeah, so, John, Colts, 18 carries for 47 yards is not going to keep Zach Moss off Jonathan Taylor's heels. Should the Colts just use Taylor as a third down back and then spell Moss once in a while?
Zach Moss has been so good this year. Still top 5 in the league in carries that have gone for 10-yard runs. He's been super explosive, and I don't know how or why, considering that's the opposite who he's been for his entire career. So you can't necessarily take Zach Moss off the field, but we did see them give Jonathan Taylor a season-high share, over 70% of backfield touches this past week. And so I think we are finally getting into the unlocked portion of Jonathan Taylor's 2023 season. So if that's the case, he, like Javonte, who I talked about earlier, and Aaron Jones, who also finally got healthy and unlocked this past week, for their schedules and usage, those are 3 guys that I'm actually very encouraged about rest of season.
Yeah. JT, Cowboys. We discussed this a little bit earlier, but it felt like the Cowboys won this game, but the scoreboard said otherwise. Did Jalen Tolbert piggy bump up the depth chart going forward?
I know you love Tolbert. I'm a guy that if I saw somebody dropping him, I've been picking him up in dynasty leagues as deeper leagues. I'm shocked that Brandon Cooks has just done nothing this year. And Tolbert, had a solid game. He's a guy, the biggest issue for him is getting on the field, getting snap shares. He's got too many guys in front of him with Gallup and Cooks. I thought the Cowboys played really well in that game. It was a back and forth game. If I'm the Cowboys, I'm upset I lost, but I'm feeling better about the rest of the season where I'm going as the offense looked a lot better and they played right with the Eagles the whole way. And the Eagles have looked like the best team in the NFC outside of the Niners a couple weeks ago.
Yeah, I'm picking up David Bell and Tolbert everywhere right now, just in case, because of the opening on the Browns. Also, these are guys that were pretty decent draft picks last year. That 2 years ago they didn't really have a great rookie season, but I feel like there's somebody like a second 2.5 year, 3 year breakout kind of guys. So those are dudes I'm definitely picking up. John, my Dolphins, early game caused a sloppy play, or the Dolphins just can't beat a team with a decent defense.
I think it comes down to their own defense being unable to stop good offenses. And it's not even a decent defense. It's just the fact the Chiefs defense has been elite. They've been amazing. They still haven't allowed a single offense to score 3 offensive touchdowns at any point this year. They've been incredible. So I don't even blame the Dolphins, who didn't have Achane in that game. Jalen Waddle got banged up. If those two teams run into each other in the AFC Championship again, I think it's going to be on much more even ground. But for right now, it was just the Chiefs defense being that good for this week. I don't worry about it.
Good answer. JT, Eagles. Devonta Smith is going to eat now with Goddard arm issue, which was a thing of the past. Last time Goddard was out, Devonta Smith went nuts. But is it finally Albert O time?
I would love to see Albert O get some run. Man, I love it. It would just make my heart happy. But Devonta Smith, I mean, you just never know what you're getting with him week to week. It just depends on how much gets hurt. I mean, the guy's a baller. It just depends on, do they look his way certain games? It's some games they just don't, and the other games they do. So hopefully with Goddard out, that means his usage goes up. But I would love to see some sneaky Albert O play in there, get him in there a little bit and get some run. That'd be awesome.
Yes, it would. John, Falcons, is Arthur Smith just outsmarting himself at this point?
Oh, yeah. He's a dunce. But it makes it easy for fantasy football, though, because we then know just not to play Kyle Pitts. That's simple. And then also, if he's, unless you have a hard start sit with him, Like there's so many better running backs than Bijan Robinson in terms of usage, in terms of the way Arthur Smith views him. That also, like, that's not even a start-sit question. Just sit Bijan Robinson. It's not Bijan's fault. It's the coach's fault. That's kind of our job, though. Our job is not to say, I like this player. I know this player's good. I want him to play. No, that's not how you win. Our job is to say, this coach is going to do this. And Arthur Smith at least makes it easy to say, he's just not going to play Bijan Robinson and Kyle Pitts where it matters most and where they score fantasy points. So, whatever. He's an idiot. We know that.
We know it. JT 49ers. I forgot. I didn't write the question here, but Brandon Ayuk, where do you see him in the pecking order of this team going forward?
In the past, I haven't been an Ayuk guy, but he's impressed me a little bit more lately. It seems like, we're never going to get that Deebo Samuel that we had a couple years ago. Now they have CMC to kind of do a lot of the stuff he did well. It just seems like Ayuk is by far their most pure wide receiver as far as that's concerned. He's not a guy I'm like actively going after, but I could see people why they like him and want to go with him. I mean, I'm a CMC guy, so I got him everywhere. So if I can have him, obviously I'd rather have him. But Ayuk, if Purdy, I think he's their top guy. I mean, Kittle's just so inconsistent. And the same thing with Deebo. He's been very inconsistent this year. So outside of CMC, I think Ayuk's the guy to own for the Niners.
All right, we got about 7 minutes left here, so let's speed up the process. John, Giants. Even Saquon Barkley can't save these Giants. What happened to Brian Daigle from Buffalo?
I think it's the offensive line. I think it's Daniel Jones' poor play under pressure because Tyrod Taylor had command of that offense. Daniel Jones was terrible. And to be fair, it was their fault. They played their cards wrong because signing Daniel Jones means you were in purgatory. You're not getting a better quarterback, and you're strapped to his cash. Fortunately, it has led them to probably be the number 1 overall draft pick in this upcoming draft. So they're going to get bailed out despite making terrible mistakes, and they're going to get off Daniel Jones this offseason and instead go to Caleb Williams, and then we will see Brian Daigle grow with Caleb Williams instead. But this year, I think I blame it more on the offensive line, and they wanting to covet strictly slot receivers in free agency. Hopefully that improves.
Yeah, they should have franchise tagged Daniel Jones and signed Saquon to a long-term deal. That was they did the opposite of what they should have done. Jaguars, JT, do you think Travis Etienne was going to be this good so far?
I really liked him coming out of college. I thought if they used him in the passing game, the way they used him at Clemson with T-Law, I thought he was a guy that could be really good. Obviously injuries held him back early on, but he's playing fantastic right now. He's their best offensive player. So I thought he could be in this range when he originally came out, but he's surprising me this year. I did not think it was going to be this year that he was going to play as well as he has.
Yeah, a lot better. John, Jets. The Jets can't just sit back and let Zach Wilson ruin this playoff contending team, can they? I mean, what are options do they have?
No, they can. They absolutely can, and they absolutely will. I don't believe Aaron Rodgers is going to come back. I still think he only says that to get attention. And no, Zach Wilson is terrible, but they knew that. You say that, but remember, they saw him the last 2 years and said, we're not going to do better than that in free agency behind Aaron Rodgers, despite Aaron Rodgers being 40 in his age 40 season and also not being good last year. Everyone forgets that part, that he was a terrible quarterback. And then they said all of that and also said, we're not going to improve our offensive line at all. Like, this is all the Jets' fault. I kind of feel bad for Zach Wilson because we know who he is as a quarterback, and the Jets didn't do anything about it. So it's their fault. They deserve this. I hope he improves, but he won't.
As a Dolphins fan, I wholly agree with that statement. Thank you very much. JT, Lions, Donovan Peoples-Jones is not just playoff roster death, right?
I'm not sure what to think about this move with them. Obviously, the Marvin Jones situation, they wanted some more players. Jameson Williams, what is he going to end up doing, if anything, this year? I like the move as a football move for the Lions for the playoff run, having another experienced guy out there. I just am not sure what I want to do with him fantasy-wise yet. I just don't know if he's going to be playable on a week-to-week basis. I just don't think he's going to be.
John, Packers, Aaron Jones being healthy just makes this whole team better, but why does this team look so bad around him?
Jordan Love. Jordan Love is bottom 5 in completion rate on throws 10 yards downfield. He's been miserable both from a clean and pocket and under pressure. Jordan Love is not an NFL quarterback. That's why they look so bad. It's also why Aaron Jones is so crucial to this process because he's the one who hides Jordan Love under center. And at least they don't have to lean on Love in that case. So we saw Aaron Jones, since I've already kind of touched on it, but we saw Aaron Jones come off season highs this past week in touches with 24, I believe it was, share of backfield touches at 63%, and a season high 24% target share. So it's all aboard Aaron Jones now because that's the only way they can hide Jordan Love.
Yeah. JT Panthers, why is Bryce Young ruining my Jonathan Mingo shares?
Bryce, he's just struggling right now. The Panthers are again, I had talked myself into the Panthers a little bit preseason that they would be a lot better. And as it got going along throughout the preseason, everything kept going. I was like, I think this seems to be a lot worse than I thought they were going to be. And they are. They're a lot worse than I thought they were going to be. I thought this defense would be much improved. And Bryce Young, it doesn't feel like they're putting him in very good positions to succeed. And it's just causing problems where none of the wideouts are having any kind of luck. Outside of like John talked about early with Adam Thielen, having some pretty good statistics in certain situations. But yeah, it's going to be a rough rest of the year for Mingo and the entire Panthers offense, I think.
John, Patriots, is this the obvious sell high on Ramondre Stevenson week after a big game?
Yes, it is. Because remember, 47 of those yards came on one single touchdown sprint. So the results were quite fluky. And he did look a little more spry. He looked explosive. But we know historically they are still using Ezekiel Elliott for the same amount of touches. So I definitely would not mind trading Ramondre Stevenson at this time.
I love you said that sprint where he almost caught. He had like a 20-yard head start.
Yeah.
And he almost got caught from behind. He looked so slow like he was carrying a piano on his back. Yeah. But yeah, I get it. JT, Raiders, why is Josh Jacobs getting 26 carries in a blowout?
They haven't had a chance to use them all year because they've been getting their ass kicked constantly. So it's like they're like, hey, we might as well get some usage. We just paid this guy. So that's why they're giving a bunch of carries. Probably too many for how much they were up, but still, for fantasy owners, I liked it. I needed some Josh Jacobs this week in some leagues. So, but yeah, I just think they're so not used to winning and it's not used to being up. I think they kind of forgot that they are just pounding their main weapon into the ground at the end of the game. But
yeah, that's Zamir White.
But it helped for fantasy.
That Zamir White would be a good garbage time guy. I'm just saying,
I know you're hoping for it.
John, Rams, we knew Matthew Stafford was good, but why can't the Wonder Twins produce without him?
Because Brett Rippon is not good at football. That's why. And then we just saw recently that it has become Carson Wentz signing with the team's practice squad. And I'm guessing that means that Stafford will probably go on into reserve, or at least Wentz is a better short-term option, they think, than Brett Rippon. So we'll see what happens. Wentz at least carried Jahan Dotson last year. Terry McLaurin struggled immensely from Wentz last year with the Commanders. So at least one of them will get there. It'll probably be Cooper Kupp, but a little more faith in Wentz than Rippon, for better or worse.
So the receivers make the quarterback, or the quarterback make the receivers? That's always the age-old question, like the chicken before the egg.
Receivers make Carson Wentz for sure. He doesn't carry anyone. Yeah.
Yes. All right. JT Ravens. Keaton Mitchell is a powerhouse at 5'8", 191. He's taking over this offense, right?
The Ravens just don't want to do that. They just want to get everybody touches. I think that's going to be going forward. It's just going to be that way. I think John said earlier, Edwards is going to be the goal line back, and you're going to get some split time between Mitchell and Hill getting receiving work and third down work. So I like him. I think he's a good player, but it's hard to trust anyone outside playing Edwards for touchdowns, high upside touchdowns with these running backs, especially you never know when Lamar's going to break off one or two rushing touchdowns too. So,
right. John, Saints, is Alvin Kamara going to suffer through his Taysom Hill game plan the rest of the season, or was just this game script dependent this game?
I think Alvin Kamara will be fine and continue offering a high floor. Now, given all the stats I said about Taysom Hill and where he's being used, is that worrisome? Oh, yeah. That takes away so much touchdown equity from Kamara inside the red zone. So I'm certainly concerned, but a high floor at least for Kamara. And honestly, given the landscape of running back, it's the same argument I have for Will Levis. Is I dare you to find 16 quarterbacks to start in fantasy right now. You can't. So you pick up Will Levis. It's the same for running backs. I dare you to find 20 running backs you're confident in. You can't. We're just playing this week-to-week game with the low-end running back too. So Alvin Kamara will remain a low-end RB1 no matter what, but we certainly got some touchdowns zapped from him because the Saints discovered something these past 2 weeks.
Truth. JT, Seahawks. How can the Seahawks be this bad with all this talent on the team?
See, they're another team that I was trying to figure out this year. It's like you look at their record, and their record's decent, pretty solid. And you look at some of their wins, they're like, oh man, they looked really good. And then and some of their losses, they just look horrible. They're just one of those teams that's so hard to figure out what Seahawks team are getting week to week. It really is surprising how much better they play at home than they do on the road. And whenever they have early East Coast games, it feels like they always play terrible. I'd have to actually look up the stats on that, but they just always seem to struggle when they come to the East Coast and play these early games. They just looked, they looked lost. They looked terrible yesterday against the Ravens.
Yeah. John, Steelers, is George Pickens just not good, or does Deontay Johnson get that much separation where Pickett doesn't even bother looking at Pickens when Johnson's healthy?
Neither. Kenny Pickett is terrible. Let's start there. Like, on Thursday night, one of those quarterbacks got drafted in the first round. And if someone hadn't watched football before, they definitely wouldn't have said the one who did get drafted there. Absolutely not. So it's not really Pickens' fault, though, because he is a dog. Like, he has amazing hands. He gets open. We saw that without Deontay Johnson when he averaged a 28% target share. But he's averaging a 21% target share with Deontay this year because Matt Canada uses him strictly on go routes. Now, even in the past 2 games with Johnson back at full health, over 50% of Pickens' routes have been go routes, just going downfield. And as we know, if you only go downfield and outside the hash marks, then those are the most volatile and hardest targets to catch. You need like 8 to 12 targets per game in order to get there consistently on those types of targets. Whereas Pickens instead gets 2 to 3 targets when he's running those routes. So now that Deontay Johnson's at full strength, I bet we lose George Pickens altogether, unfortunately, this year.
Yeah. JT, Texans. What should the Texans send the Panthers for Christmas for not taking Stroud 101?
I don't know if there's a present big enough that they could give them. I was banging the drum for CJ Stroud the whole offseason. I thought he was by far the best QB in this draft class. I was hoping the Colts could somehow sneak out a deal to get him. When the Panthers didn't take him, I thought the Panthers, when they made the trade up, I thought that's what they were doing. I thought they were trading up for CJ Stroud. And when they took Bryce Young instead, I was honestly a little shocked. And I was a little mad because I was like, now I get to watch CJ Stroud in the South, but he's on the Texans, and now the Colts got to go against him for the rest of his career, supposedly. So, but yeah, man, they really blew that one. The Texans look so much better. I just think CJ Stroud is a real deal talent, and he showed it this last week.
John, Titans. Is Will Levis being compared to Smoking Jay Cutler? Is that fair in your opinion, or should it be someone else better or worse?
You were breaking up at the beginning there. What was that first part?
Will Levis is being compared to Smoking Jay Cutler. Is this fair in your opinion, or should it be compared to someone better or worse?
No, I think that's completely fair. Big arm quarterback who we just need him to develop accordingly. And to be fair, Jay Cutler is the best quarterback in Bears history, as crazy as that is, thinking about it. But it's fun watching Will Levis too, because he's basically like rookie year Josh Allen, not to give him the same ceiling as Josh Allen, even though maybe it could be there. But it's the fact that he can make anything happen on any play. And I don't even mean that in a good way. Sometimes it ends up being like the worst possible scenario. But like, we need a fun quarterback like that this year. It's so much better than like turning on the TV and seeing Tommy DeVito somehow is in the NFL. And I don't know how at all. So yeah, I think Jay Cutler is the proper comparison.
Good. Vikings. JT, how underrated is Josh Dobbs?
I'm going to jump on that Tommy DeVito comment real quick because I just got offered a 4th round pick for him in a 2 QB league that obviously people are struggling, so I think I'm going to take it anyway. But I watched DeVito at Syracuse a ton. I watched him his last year at Illinois. I had people ask me all weekend, they're like, was he good enough to be in the NFL? I'm like, no. There's a reason he lost a starting job at Syracuse and transferred to Illinois. I'm glad that he's in the league. I'm happy for him personally, but man, how are we not coming up with some better QBs backups. I mean, obviously, going into my question now with Josh Dobbs, I mean, Josh Dobbs is doing this, but nobody else. We can't find anyone else in the league that can come in and even be serviceable. Great game for Dobbs. Good story. Absolutely murdered me on a 16 parlay. That was the only loss was the Falcons. I can't freaking believe it. Josh Dobbs coming in less than a week with a team and getting the win. He's just an anomaly right now. Feel good for that guy. Career backup, and all of a sudden he's getting, I can't even remember what season this is. And for him, he's been in the league a long time, and he's finally getting starts, and he's playing pretty well.
And even Sunday when Dobbs came in, 3 of his first 4 possessions ended with a safety and 2 fumbles by him. Like I thought,
it's like
I was like,
early.
Yeah, I was like, that's the same guy that what happened the last month at Arizona. Like that's not a good thing. But then like that massive 22-yard scramble on 4th and 7, plus the game-winning touchdown, good for him because I want him to be successful. He's such a good kid. But yeah, it's been rough this past month and a half with Arizona.
The past
just a lot of terrible QB play. It blows my mind.
Yeah. That is the best nickname in the history of nicknames, I think. The Pastronaut. I think that was hilarious when they said that. John, Washington football team. You know there's going to be an Antonio Gibson question. So what team is Antonio Gibson going to next year that's going to make him a superstar?
It's a great question. Who needs a pass-catching running back? The Chiefs would be sexy. The Bills have James Cook, but man, they hate James Cook. They are just unhappy with him at every role except on 3rd down. It's probably what Leonard Fournette takes over too eventually. Yeah, it's a great question. Joe Mixon won't be on the Bengals either, so maybe Joe Mixon. But also right now I'm biasedly inserting him into places where his fantasy stock rises. So I don't know, but hopefully it's a good one. How about that?
Fantastic. Well, I said an hour, John. It's like an hour and 15 minutes already. I appreciate your time. Thank you very much. We got a couple more segments on here, but we'll save them for next time. Just trade questions and stuff like that. So thank you very much, man. I appreciate you coming on. Tell everybody where they can find you at and all that good stuff.
At Daigle on Twitter and 4for4.com, whether it's redraft content, the waiver wire, the free preview shows and podcast I do every week on the Most Accurate Podcast, that feed, and then DFS content as well on the site. Pretty much whatever you need, whatever you're into, I'm there talking football.
Hey, JT.
Yeah, you can find me at JT Orange on the X or Twitter. Anything and everything. You can find my show, The Stew with JT Brew, on the Dynasty Pros football channel on YouTube. Also, all my IDP stuff is on DLF. My rankings are there, and I also do a waiver wire IDP article every Wednesday on Fantrax.
Find me, John McGlynn 75 on a Twitter machine. And thanks everybody for jumping in. Log into Fantrax. The show is on Fantrax every week. Me and JT have our hockey league on Fantrax. Fantrax also has golf, racing, everything you could possibly imagine. Give Fantrax a try if you're trying to start up a league. A little bit more obscure than most other sites. But thank you very much for watching. John McGlynn 75, and this was the Commissioner Evaluation Show. Thank you very much.